Furthest away from me, we have Matthew Bell, country head for Hungary at Sandoz Hungária Kft, a role he has held since May 2025. He's gained extensive experience within the Sandoz Group during his more than 4 years with the company, including his previous post as strategic assistant to the CEO. And I suspect that strategy is going to be something we need to explore in this conversation. Matt had worked in Canada and Germany before moving to Hungary. He also has experience from his time at LEK Consulting and healthcare intelligence company IQVIA. Matt describes Hungary as a dynamic market with so much opportunity. And just bear in mind that last slide, let's hope it stays that way. He gained a Master of Business Administration from HHL Leipzig Graduate School of Management in 2015. And then closest to me, we have Vanda Galambos, who is the Health Policy Centre Lead at Roche Magyarország Kft, a role she's held since January 2023, where she is responsible for strategic health policy initiatives. Again, strategy, it will be important. A recognised expert in health policy and pharmaceutical regulation, she's been the policy working group lead at AIPM Hungary, so she will be known to many of you through that work. And she's held that position since October 2023. And since September the 1st, 2024, she's been chair of the Healthcare Committee at the American Chamber of Commerce in Hungary, fostering dialogue and collaboration among key stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your panel. Give them a round of applause. I'm going to start by going backwards, which is perhaps a little unusual, but I'm anxious to get the views of Matt and Vanda. So let's go back to that framework. Why are we here? What is it that the United States is trying to do in pursuing drug price reductions? And I'm also anxious that we don't, with President Trump, it's very easy to view him and to use him as a lightning rod. But as Kat has said, this predates Trump. US authorities have long complained that prices in the States are higher than they are in Europe. And there's also an echo of the NATO discussions here. The US is effectively, as the US sees it, is effectively subsidizing prices in Europe. And I think most dispassionate observers would accept that positioning. So the overall policy aim, as we know, is to bring down US prices, or at least make them closer to other countries. We know that we're already looking at 16 drugs that have been identified. We also know that the longer this process goes on, the greater effect it will have. So this isn't going away, and it's not going to get magically easier with a change in regime anywhere. So let's start by playing devil's advocate. And Matt, as you're furthest from me, we'll start with you. Is the United States right in its presumption? And to play devil's advocate, isn't what they're doing entirely justified from a US perspective?
Simply put, yes. I think it's absolutely justified for them to do what they're doing. I mean, some drugs in the United States cost 10 times more than they do in Europe. The US dynamic is a complex one to understand with PBMs, Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare Advantage, blah, 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 right? There's a lot of different structures as well as list price and net price dynamics as well. But yeah, I think absolutely they are certainly should be doing this.
Okay, I mean, I think it's important that we lay that down, that particularly as we don't have any spokesman from the US government here either. Vanda, I assume you're not radically different in your opinion from that.
Not at all, but I as I'm representing our community who is sitting here, I think what I can add to this is that politicians tend to oversimplify everything. And this is not a slogan. So we are here to help politicians and help the lay public understand this complexity. So we cannot just say that the prices are 10 times higher, so let's just reduce it, because there's a structure behind, as you two just mentioned, and we are completely different from that. So we need to be the advocates for the patients here in Hungary so that they can access the drugs they need. This is our role as a community, and of course geopolitical and economic things are affecting this very much. But our most important thing here is to make sure that we get the best out of this whole global situation.
Yeah, I think it was, if it wasn't in the last slide that Kat put up, it was very close to it. The people who are at the end of this process and the people who possibly will suffer most from this process are the Hungarian patients if they don't get access to those innovatives. So we need to, as ever, keep the Hungarian patient in mind. Let's talk a little about global pricing spillovers. Particularly, actually, Kata, let's come back to you on this, because it seems to me that Hungary is going to get squeezed, well, is being squeezed every which way. Part of that is simply down to market size, and there's nothing we can do about that. Hungary is a small market, so how do we protect the market? What is the way forward?
First, before answering this question, I would like to refer back to NATO, and I would like to refer back whether it's justified by the Americans to do that, and why am I doing that? Last year was the first year where actually all NATO members reached the threshold that they needed in terms of spending on defense. Why is that? Because the US insisted that they will not take the burden alone. So this means that you can achieve these things, and it's justified. Why I was referring back to this, because it gives us a hint how successful US can be if they want to achieve something. Coming back to what you were asking, I believe that it's not really the size of the market. The size of the market is as it is. There are smaller size markets. Let me just mention, for example, Slovenia, which is like a much smaller market with a much bigger revenue. So it's not necessarily the size, actually. It's, as I was mentioning, the reference pricing, the favorable environment for business as such, and the readiness to have a dialogue. And I would say that those are the things which can help Hungary on the short run even, but definitely in the long run, to keep the access to the Hungarian patients.
I'll come to you in a second, Vanda, sorry. I just wanted to follow back up on that. As you mentioned earlier, you're talking to government representatives. They are aware of the challenges. How could they not be? And this is perhaps an unfair question, but you know, I'm famous for asking unfair questions, so I'll do it anyway. Do you see, and with the huge caveat that we don't know who will form the government after April the 12th, but do you see an understanding of a need to find a way forward?
I absolutely do. In both sides, I absolutely do. So I'm actually, I mean, it's very rare that you hear something like this from me, that I'm very optimistic about the future in this sense, because according to our discussions which we had, and according to what we know about the plans of the present opposition, and we don't know what will be happen after next week, but what we know is that both sides acknowledges the problem, and both sides want to somehow reflect back on that. So I'm pretty positive that there will be some changes in this. There might be some restructuring of the reimbursement system. And right now, when the government had a decision on the new reimbursement list last week, which was, I think, a huge success, and I would say like a huge respect for us, because it's definitely not for gaining any more votes at the very last days before the election. So it's rather acknowledging the seriousness of the problem. But when they decided on this, they also expressed that they know that they have to change this predictability in terms of the reimbursement list. So what we see is that if the present government continues, even they do have some sort of, I would say, commitment, of course not from the Prime Minister, but on the level who are the people dealing with this, we do have a commitment that they would like to change, and they would like to have some legal stipulation that there will be at least yearly reimbursement list, which will be like within the Maslow pyramid. This is the starting point, the 0 point, to breathe, really.
Thank you for that. I thought it was important to jump in there right away. Vanda, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, exactly. Because we need to finance innovation. That's unquestionable. But where's the money coming from? The money is coming from the economy. And of course, economies are very complex because of energy prices and supply chains. But one thing is sure, that you need healthy workforce. So if you want to boost your economy, why don't you invest as a decision maker in your population so that they will be able to create more added value? Let it be a worker in a factory, or engineers, or life science industry, high added value jobs. So what we are also doing besides those education is that we try to show the value of this whole life science ecosystem. Within the AmCham, within the AIPM, we are conducting studies, we are building narratives so that those who are allocating the resources will see how deeply the life science ecosystem is connected to all the societies and what it can bring to the table, besides that this is, of course, a cost line in the budget.
Robin, if I may,
of
jump
course,
in if you don't mind. So 2 things. I mean, if we break this down to a very basic level, right? I mean, countries are getting poorer, drugs are getting more expensive, populations are getting older. We need to do something different to fund innovation going forward, but also healthcare within countries, not just in Hungary, but European and globally, period. I mean, that's very basic. And at the end of the day, we're talking about the healthcare system. I mean, Sandoz, as you know, is a generics provider. Generics really are the backbone of medicine, but we need both the generic side to bring competition and savings that can then fund innovation, right? And both pieces, both types of companies are critical for the going forward of healthcare globally.
And I'm glad you mentioned generics, because it kind of leads me onto the next area I want to explore, which is unintended consequences. And I'd be interested in your view in particular, Matt, because you don't have as much skin in that particular part of the game. But is one of the, Vanda, we'll start with you, is one of the unintended consequences of this that maybe the general pool of money that's spent on innovation is reduced, or at least refocused? And what does that do for the, and I don't often do this, but I think we have to approach this at a global level rather than a Hungarian level or even a Slovenian level. What impact does that have on global R&D and innovation, do you think?
Innovation is also not a simple thing. So, I mean, this is a huge investment, so you need to be carefully select where you invest. But there are then things that must be financed, like antimicrobial resistance is a huge problem, but very few entities can afford to innovate there, because this is very costly, you don't know the outcome, the patient population is quite small, or we can even talk about rare diseases. So we need really here a discussion which consist the academia, which consist the research centers, the generics, the payers, the patient groups, and then around
the shareholders. Sorry.
I always forgot about them, but yeah.
No, but it would be great.
Course, yes.
It would be great for them to have an awareness of what is happening.
Yeah. So it's the time that people are just try and fail are a bit over now. So we need to strategically plan where to invest, where to innovate, and then how to turn then the innovation to become generic. So the regulatory data protection, the IP protection as a factor within innovation became much more important than like in 20 years ago or so.
Innovation to drive it, I think the incentives are required. Yep. I mean, that's why we have an IP environment that protects innovator products for 10 years. But after that, I think the generics need to come in, biosimilars need to come in and create volume and drive competition. So it's really, you need both. It's critical for this. But the incentives are key. And to do that, the government needs to find the right location to incentivize.
I get that very much, that it is a two-handed approach and you need both. Do you worry for the level of investment into innovation?
What concerns me more, I think, is the access piece. Right now, I mean, currently as it stands, there's 200 innovative drugs that haven't come to market. But I think there's significant headroom in the way reimbursement can be made, incentives can be made for generics and biosimilars as well to free up capacity and capital to spend on those products. There's an IQVIA study that we have in the penetration of biosimilars, for example, which over the next 10 years, there's $320 billion globally of LOEs occurring. Generics penetration, biosimilar penetration in Hungary is only 17%. 17. 17. So I think there's a huge headroom to increase that, generate savings for the population to be spent elsewhere, whether that's on the healthcare system or on innovative drugs as well.
Kata.
Can I?
Of course.
So just two things that I would like to mention concerning the generics and concerning the very much interrelated ecosystem. If you remember that table which I put up at the life cycle of the different drugs, that actually explains how generics and innovative pharma works. If the system somehow supports the innovative drugs to come into the market in right time when they are put on market, and they can reach that peak, they can actually pay off for the development. Then it's also easier for the generics to come in time, take down the prices, and to operate more. But generics can operate on markets which are built up. Generic prices are not giving a room for building up markets, which is problematic, because you come to a loophole when actually if you are not allowing innovative drugs in time, and it might not be launched just at the very last moment, then you will not build up the market itself, which means that actually the generics will not be able to come in. And that's one more thing which I wanted to mention, that I'm always very cautious in underlining that it's not generics against innovative. Generics are suffering within this system the same way as innovatives are suffering. So we are really very much depending on each other, and what's wrong for one side is wrong for the other as well, because we are going hand in hand to actually give the patients the best treatment for the best price at the best stage of the life cycle of the drug. Without the generics, there would be no room for the innovatives to have new developments. And at the same time, of course, no health system could always pay for the highest prices and for all the new drugs. So it's very important to state that it's not one against the other, it's the two systems together, pharma, and at the same time, actually, the access to patients. That's one thing. The other thing which I would like to refer back is you were somehow asking about the pressure on Hungary, the pressure on what will happen if we are not doing anything about investment. One thing is what we are forgetting about. We are living in a very global information world, which means that patients know about the new treatments. If there are new treatments in the US, which is approved by the FDA, the patients here in Hungary know about this.
Yep.
Maybe not at the very small local village, but it will come. The pressure will come. So actually no countries, in my opinion, no countries can allow itself any policy of letting out innovation, because the pressure will come, ideally, normally, realistically, by their own citizens, by the patients who actually need that treatment. Because just think about the fact, if you're facing like some sort of cancer, which you know that there is a treatment for that, and I've been in that situation, believe me, back years ago. I knew that some treatment was already approved by the FDA, it was not yet approved by the EMA, and I knew that I wanted that treatment because I knew that that's the key for living. And I did everything that I could to get that treatment. So why I'm very passionate about this is because I've been to that side when I needed to fight for the drug, and where I needed to fight for that drug that I knew that it gave us years in life. And that's what we shouldn't forget at the end, the patients, and that they will give us the pressure to not fail them.
That's an important point. Well, A, I'm delighted that you got through that, but B, thank you, because it's important to underline that. And again, we come back to the fact that at the end of this, it's the patients, and it's the patients that matter. Did you want to add something, Vanda?
Yeah, and just as Kata said that this is the global word, but also innovation is a global thing. So it's not that a Hungarian scientist discovers something in, let's say, Szeged, and then they can deliver the whole value chain. So we have clinical trials, we have innovation ecosystem interconnected globally. We need to carefully set up really a global ecosystem for that. And this is why it's crucial that a Hungarian decision maker understands that they are not buying drugs. They are contributing to the global innovation ecosystem, which ultimately will provide health and healthy life years to their citizens, which is a basic human right. And also, if you create an environment here in Hungary that is that can be a part of this global ecosystem, then you get more than just healthy life years, but you can then provide really a nice outlook for your young scientists, that they can be part of this whole global ecosystem. You can even give a lot of motivation to your healthcare workers. So let's say a doctor or a nurse can also be part of an innovation process by participating in a clinical trial. So this is crucial to see that they are not just buying drugs, they are opening doors to their citizens to be part of something bigger and more value added.
And it also links back to that slide that Kata had towards the end about the need not to lose jobs, the need to keep the young scientists here and working here, because you can't do anything in isolation. I was struck by the fact that you said you were positive. So I wasn't surprised that you were a positive person, I hasten to add, but I would like to try and draw some positives out. Having been put in a situation that Europe would not have chosen to put itself into by being asked to think again by the US, are there benefits on offer here for Europe? And that's quite a philosophical question, because you can argue that let's go back to that NATO example. There are very obvious benefits for Europe in taking responsibility for its own defense. But for so long, Europe seemed quite happy to allow the United States to do that heavy lifting for it. So although they may not wish to be in this position, they find themselves in this position. Do we think there are benefits for Europe in being forced to look at this again? Matt, you're the only one here who's not sort of naturally European. So let's start with the transatlantic view.
Well, to be honest, I almost consider myself European. I've been here for almost 12 years now. So, but
we'll allow you to consider yourself.
And sometimes Canada wants to be part of Europe as opposed to North America anyway. So, nevertheless, I think there's certainly opportunities. Would it have come without this push? It's a possibility as well. I mean, the NATO example, I think, is excellent. Essentially, the push from the US and arguably Trump, it's been a catalyst to rethink how things are being done. And I think Trump pushing us is better on the NATO side than what we have in the East, potentially Putin and an invasion or whatever that may be, right? But I think the drug situation is similar. As opposed to having a catastrophic collapse of the system because of the macro dynamics, I think having that push from arguably an ally is probably something that's beneficial for us, right? And I think there's more opportunities than what we've done in the past and push drug manufacturers for lower prices or discounts or whatever that may be. But a fundamental rethink of the system and how a reference pricing is done, how we look at insurers, how we take slack out of the system. There's a lot of opportunities other than just drugs, right? We talked about PBMs in the US. In Germany, the statutory healthcare insurance has increased between 13 and 16% per year. So it's not just here and it's not in the US. A lot of countries have this problem. So I think there's opportunities. Yeah, it's a catalyst. It'll push us to accelerate things. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Matt.
I was thinking a catalyst, I think, is a very good word. I wanted to use acceleration and a slap in the face. I think it was happening anyway. So like the whole process was happening. It was a slow death. Now we came to the point that, okay, we had a slap in the face and now we need to decide, like, do we wake up or we would like to walk away? I mean, that's the choice of Europe. In this sense, I'm not that positive, I have to say, so in European perspective, but we don't have any other chance.
Mm-hmm. Vanda?
Yeah, let's face it, other industries were much more successful in putting themselves up on the political agenda, like the chemical industry with the European Green Deal, the car manufacturers, and then COVID hit. So that there was a global realization, by the way, there's healthcare. Am I protected? Will I survive? I mean, on a very personal level. And then this phenomena from the US and now European decision makers are now waking up a bit. And they try to reframe this whole life science industry with the Biotech Act, for example. So there are ideas now, but I don't really see the common understanding of the importance and that we need to act together. I don't know how you see. You are much more closer to the European level.
Maybe one thing that I would add on to this, we do have a Hungarian origin healthcare commissioner within the European Commission, and it's not because he's Hungarian, but because he really knows the industry. He's trying to now set up a strategic dialogue with both the industry, generic, innovative, medtech alike, plus member states. Mm-hmm. Like this two-stream strategic dialogue. You mentioned that I wrote my PhD in European law. I have to tell you that according to the European legislation, healthcare is a national competence, which means that actually there is a limitation what you can do on European level. So we can just point to Brussels being the problem, but Brussels cannot take this responsibility by law. So that's why it's a very particular situation. But where we can address this situation is actually the European Council, where heads of states and government are sitting. And if they acknowledge the problem, that they can do something. So, and I do think, and again, I'm trying to stay on the positive side. I do think that there is some sort of acknowledgement that this is coming, that this is something that we have to do. We have to address this situation somehow.
May I add just one short word here? China. So, I mean, we are sitting here in the US-Europe relation, but there's China with their massive innovations. They are a lot of people they can conduct clinical trials, and then they for sure will try to sell their products, let it be a generics or an innovation globally, right?
Actually, if I may jump in with something here. So first of all, I love Europe. I love the concept of it, but it's way too bureaucratic. And I think there's fundamental issues with that. And I mean, we're running into some issues at Sandoz. Not sure who's aware, but we have the last vertically integrated manufacturing facility of antibiotics in the Western world. Without antibiotics, you can't do routine surgeries, and it's literally curable medicines, right? China is an issue. 90% of US generics, the starting materials come from China. And if there was 90,
wow.
And if there was ever a conflict, and say our Kundl business closes, all of our antibiotics are coming from the East, India and China, right? So there's a huge exposure here. The European Union is very aware of this, but we've been in dialogue with them for more than 2 years about this, if not longer, since the spin-off that we had from Novartis, but nothing's really happened. There's a lot of talk, but very little action.
That is the European Union in one sentence.
Correct.
Sorry, do you want to jump in?
I just wanted to say that I 100% agree.
Okay. I like 100% agreement. We don't always get it. Ladies and gentlemen, we did promise the opportunity to open up to questions from the floor. So is there anyone who has a burning question they would like to put to these brilliant brains? Not mine, theirs.
Thank you for the compliment. I'm not sure, but...
Any questions? Anyone? It's a really... It's one of those conversations where you can go very, very deep. You can take on huge issues, or you can go. So you can do macro, you can do micro. Does anyone have any macro or micro they want to bring? It is possible that we are so brilliant we have covered all of the ground.
No, we haven't covered actually digitalization, and this is burning. Yeah, because
then Vanda, burn.
Now there's the opportunity for everyone, and this is very scary on one hand, but on the other hand, this is a huge opportunity to actually assess the performance of our treatments, which is very beautiful. So if we set up solid and well-structured digital systems, then it's really an opportunity to measure our impact. And I think in Hungary we have a slight advantage here, not that huge, we believe, but at least a slight. So let's build on it and let's develop it further. Right?
When I was referring to what is happening in Germany, being the biggest market, actually in Germany now they are thinking about introducing those outcome measured agreements, which actually includes certain rebate measures to milestones, like the milestones you have in the clinical trials that you need to achieve. The same milestones you have to achieve within treatment, and either the payer will pay you, or you will pay the payer if your treatment doesn't work. And I believe that this is something that we have to be prepared for. I honestly believe in the companies that I'm representing, so I believe that our treatments are actually meeting the line where we can meet these milestones. But we also have to acknowledge one thing, that producing the same results in the real world consequences or environment is not the same as doing so within very controlled clinical trial environment. So here I think we also have to face a challenge ourselves and try to think about how we will face this this pressure from the insurance companies that they would like to see milestones within the treatment. They will not be able to pay, like, I don't know, huge amounts for treatments just because of, you know, ethical reasons, because they need to give access. They will want to have results. They will want to have hard milestones at the end.
It's thinking with a businessman's perspective. I'm not a businessman, I'm a journalist, but having KPIs does seem to be a fairly basic approach, isn't it? I mean, it's like, shouldn't we be doing this anyway?
I fully agree. I mean, every one of us in the room has a review with our manager or boss at the end of the year, and if we don't meet our KPIs, your pay suffers, right? So I think having something similar would be, it's almost basic, really, as you said.
And for that, we in Hungary, we need to elevate the standard of care in many areas and also educate the workforce, you know, just because it cannot be the situation that you will compare the German standard of care to the standard of care in Bázakeretje, Hungary. So it's like,
No, and I think that there's, I wouldn't say global answers, but there's fundamental frameworks that can be put in place, but localized for whatever it is in that given country.
Any questions, ladies and gentlemen, from the floor? Yes. Bear with me 1 second, sir. I need the exercise in the morning, so I'm very glad to find you all the way down here.
Thank you also for your view and your positivism, because I was kind of missing it as an outsider coming into Hungary now for a year. I'm the GM of Teva Pharmaceuticals. You mentioned a couple of times, and indeed it started earlier with the Inflammation Reduction Act and so on, and I think there are two problems here in Hungary, right? One is the governmental choices, one is everything that you discussed. But I think it's also bigger and more. I like the romantic view of the clinical trials and so on, but there are fundamental other issues as well. For example, the comparison to placebo and head-to-head. So I was wondering how you see that, right? Because those are important differences already, especially if there will be more and more focus on the US too.
Thank you.
If I can add a disclaimer here that whatever I'm saying from this moment on, I'm not saying it as an AIPM director. I would say as Katalin Szaloki, okay? So just that's a disclaimer. What I think is that the whole structure of clinical trials need to be revisited because it just simply doesn't work in the present environment. Most of the companies trying to find the most niche little line in order to fall into the rare diseases category and to have an orphan drug because there are more favorable lines of processes for the orphan drugs. This is something that bugs, of course, the insurers. And at the same time, it takes a lot of time, which actually during the COVID times, we saw that it's not necessarily needed. So in my view, but again, just very personal view, this whole thing needs to be revisited. And at the same time, another thing needs to be revisited is the business models of the big pharma companies. And that's why I'm saying that I need a disclaimer here because I'm not working and I have never worked for a big pharma company. So I don't know the pressure. I mean, I can see on my colleagues the pressure, but I don't know the pressure myself that they are facing from the shareholders. But that's why I was mentioning when Vanda was saying about the different stakeholders that we need to have this discussion for the shareholders as well, so that they understand what's the context. When they are trying to get more money out from the shares that they have, they need to understand that the pharma is not the same pharma as it was 15 years ago or 20 years ago. So I do think that there are several concepts here that need to be revisited and rethought, which is very hard in such a turbulent environment. And we were not talking about the repurposing of drugs. We were not talking about so many other things which comes in, about the death valley of those drugs which never reach the market because of business interest. There are so many questions that bugs me personally, but of course it's far beyond our competence as AIPM or as within here in Hungary in this room.
Vanda, do you want to add anything?
I was just thinking about that we need really to increase the general understanding of this whole topic. And for that, we need strong patient advocacy group. We need health literacy, strong health literacy in a country that let's prevent what's preventable, because we need money for diseases that are not preventable, and let's research those diseases that have the biggest burden. And I see that it is already started. We now have EU HTA that might not be the perfect one, the joint clinical assessment, but at least something is started. And I do believe that here in Hungary, with this kind of events and events organized by other associations and meetings with different stakeholders, we can really spread the word that only together can we move forward, because no single identity or no single body can do a huge step to solve this problem.
Lots of little steps. Matt, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, to be honest, I can't comment too much on the clinical trials piece. Not really of our area of expertise, I would say. But I think changes in the way that clinical trials are done is always welcome. I mean, drugs are changing, therapy areas that we're researching are changing, science is advancing, so you can't do it in the same way that was done 20 or 30 years ago, right? Yeah. And from our side, we really welcome the removal of the phase 3 for biosimilars from EMA and the FDA, at least the progress that they've made there so far. But that reduces our development costs and brings drugs faster and cheaper to patients. So I think a fundamental rethink is always necessary.
Faster and cheaper. We like those words. We have
more
time.
Efficient, maybe. Let's say.
We have time, maybe, for one more question. If there's anyone burning to ask anything or make a comment, no. Well, in that case, we did cover the ground extremely well. Takeaways.
Good luck with that one, Robin. There's a lot.
In due course, we will be releasing a podcast of this, and all of the takeaways are in there. So please, I encourage you to listen to it. I think I always look for a couple of phrases that stand out. And there was one very early on in the slides from Katy, which was that Europe isn't underpricing, except it is underpricing, but the real problem is that it's underinvesting. And I think that pretty much everyone sitting around the table would welcome more investment. Transparency. Speaking as someone who deals with the government on a daily basis and just reporting it, transparency is always a good thing. It's always quite hard to find in Hungary. I mean, I'm a journalist. I'd say that wherever I was in the world. We need more transparency. If anyone's listening, please give it to us. And I like the idea that as I say, Trump is a lightning rod. But what he has very cleverly done, or perhaps unintentionally, but what he has very clearly done, is identify a problem which everybody needs to think about. And it doesn't matter if you like his approach or his ways of getting there or not. He has dragged us to a place where we have to think again about, well, pretty much everything. There are philosophical questions about how you approach healthcare, whether the American model is ridiculous or the European model is ridiculous, or perhaps there's, who knows, some middle way between the two that would work. But you have to start to think about that. And I'm going to go back to one more phrase from Kata, which is that, well, actually a phrase from Matt and a variation from Kata. So Matt talked about Trump being a catalyst, or this situation being a catalyst to make us think again. And then Kata played with the idea of an accelerant, but you know, throwing oil on fire is never generally a good thing, but a slap in the face, yes. Sometimes you need a punch in the nose to think about what is going to come. We could have this conversation, we could continue this conversation for far longer, but we do promise a stop time, and we do promise to give you the opportunity to network some more and have some coffee some more, and if you're very lucky to keep that coffee in your pot or your cup.
I didn't manage that.
It's early in the morning. So I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention this morning. I hope you have found it useful to hear the conversation that we've had. It's unfortunate the government couldn't be with us today. It wasn't the decision of the people that we had lined up, but the government's made its decision, so we have to live with that. As I said at the start, it's very much our intention that we get back to that, because we think it's fundamental to the process that this isn't an echo chamber, that we are able to collegiately exchange ideas. So we hope to get back to that. We hope that you will join us at that when we get back to that. So for now, our thanks to our emergency keynote speaker, Dr. Katalin Szaloki of AIPM Hungary, and to our roundtablists. I'm going to stick with that. Our roundtablists, Kata, obviously, Matthew Bell of Sandoz Hungary, and Vanda Galambos. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.